Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for coming, and hope you find this talk interesting. I work at Mojang in a project that's called Minecraft. So I wanted to know how many of you actually have played Minecraft before or know Minecraft. So I guess it's a very popular game. It's still pretty big, and it's still actually growing, and it's going to make its 10-year anniversary like this year. And I'm part of actually a team that's a cross-functional team of designers, C++ developers, and JavaScript developers that are part of a project to rebuild the UI interface for Minecraft. So you looked at the title, you read in the meetup, and you saw like React game UIs, and you're like, okay, like are you using actually web technologies to build game UIs? Yes, we are using. Confused? So you might have wondered, right, why we are doing this. And every time I talk to someone and I say that I'm doing what I'm doing, people are like, why the hell are you doing this? And actually, there are a lot of reasons why we're doing this. And a lot of them are kind of like outside of the scope that would matter to you. But the most important ones that I could say is like, first, the web is actually an open standard, right? So a big problem that we have in the game industry that was kind of like a little bit of a shock to me when I joined Mojang is that a lot of it is very secretive. So you go to a studio, they have their own tools, they have their own standards, their own formats, and whatever they do is super secretive. They don't talk to anyone, they don't show anyone. And if you work in a company today and you work in a company tomorrow, you're going to be using a completely different set of tools. So you basically like, every studio has their own tools. So it's very hard to onboard new people on your team when you're trying to hire because they basically have to learn your weird layouting language that you have using JSON and some weird syntax. So that's a big problem. So we wanted to solve that, and we wanted to find a solution that would basically be already solved by someone. So we wanted to basically be able to find any web developer in the community and be able to onboard that person in a team and be building new UIs for the game, kind of like on the first day. So the great thing that we also, I guess, forget about is like how good the tooling is around web. And this is also like something that I saw when I joined Mojang, right? We're used to kind of like having our Webpack server running with hot module replacement, and we save a file and we see an update, it's instantaneously updating in the browser. When I saw then a C++ developer, they had to change a C++ file to update something in the UI, and then they need to wait for the compiler, the linker. It's like they actually have distribute builds across different machines in the entire office, and then it's still like minutes to see a change in your machine. So it's actually a big problem. So like in the web, we have all these amazing things, like it was mentioned before, like Prettier, Webpack, TypeScript, Babel, Lambda. We can do visual regression testing with Jest. We have StyleLint, React Router, Chrome DevTools, and so on. And these are some of the stuff that we use in our team. And I'm pretty sure, I guess, all of you know this stuff or use at some point in a project. And another big thing is that we wanted to be able to create a reusable library of components. So Minecraft, differently from a bunch of games, like if you look, I don't know, Assassin's Creed or whatever, they do like Assassin's Creed 5, and then it's done, it's out, and then they do the 6 and the 7 and whatever. So it's projects that they build, they crunch to get it out, and then it's done. But like Minecraft is more like a platform in a way. It's a very long-lived project. So if you bought Minecraft 10 years ago, you're still getting updates for it today. You're not paying for it. And that's the business model of Minecraft. You're always going to be getting updates. So it's making 10 years this year, and it's probably going to be here for way, way longer. So we need a way of building something that is sustainable and we can actually evolve. And we are kind of like starting to build this. So this is like our design system-ish kind of thing that we're building inside of this is in React. Like we see some components here. So we can actually then, from different teams building different parts of the game, they can reuse these components and get more consistency and speed, and also fix long-standing usability issues that we have in the game. So now that we know the why, the question is, of course, how, right? And we can use Chromium and just put Chromium inside Minecraft and just run our UI with it, right? And yes. Of course not. So we actually tried this at the beginning. So the first prototype of this idea was embedding Chromium inside of Minecraft. And the first iterations of it was actually just playing with it, just to try out the flow. And the advantages were clear, but of course Chromium is not a solution because we need to actually run Minecraft in all of these devices, right? It needs to run in a potato Android phone, in an iPhone 4S, all the way to an Xbox, Xbox X and a Switch. So it needs to run in all of these, and Chromium was clearly not fit for that. But we wanted the benefits, but we didn't want to use Chromium. So the team actually found a solution with this company called Coherent Labs. So they took the basically open standards of the web, and they built a custom layout engine based on it. So it's kind of like another browser, so to speak, that is optimized for games. And it has partial support for the standards. It's kind of like a subset. It doesn't have everything. So for example, it doesn't have floats, but I don't need floats. I have Flexbox now. So it has the advantage of like throwing away stuff that we don't need, or that would be slow, so that we can have actually a fast rendering with the game. But the good thing is that we actually have the full JavaScript runtime support. We have modern runtimes available for us. So we have all the latest and greatest features from like V8, JavaScript Core, and so on, which allow us to use libraries like React to build these UIs. So what this means is that if I build a UI for Minecraft using GameFace, using all this stack, it will run in the browser. But if I take any page from the web and try to run in Minecraft, it will not work. So what this allows us to do is that we can actually build a game UI, do the whole development flow that we're used to as web developers, get all the quick feedback and inspector tools, debugging, all those good things that we know and love, and then that same UI that I just built will run exactly the same inside of the game. And in the game, we also have inspector, and we get the same benefit running in the game as well. So that's pretty amazing and very compelling. And we can actually have a design system in the local network available so that we can see the components documented, and it's the same components that are running inside of the game. So there's a lot of stuff related to what we're doing, and I only have a couple of minutes to talk about it. So I picked one topic to talk, and that's around gamepad interaction. So we're building web applications, and there's something that is unique about game. And the first one is like a gamepad. I guess all of you know what's a gamepad. It was raised to me that this might not be super obvious because of the name, so it's how we interact with video games, right? And we have this thing that's the D-pad that we can go left, right, up, and down, right? So that's how we usually interact with the game to focus stuff around. And this is what happens, right? I have this game UI, and then I can just press left and right, and I can pick this kind of like a Netflix-esque kind of UI, and I can go back and forth in these cards by pressing left and right, and I can do up and down, and so on. So I'm basically navigating the UI with the gamepad, pressing the arrow keys. The web, we kind of have something like this with the tab index. I mean, it is kind of a feature, but we can think about it as it's only one dimension, right? We can only go forwards and backwards. We can do tab and shift tab, but I cannot go one more dimension that's important for us. So what we actually need to do is a way of taking this UI and abstracting a way that we have columns, rows, and the actual focusable elements. And once we have these laid out, then we can start implementing some navigation logic. And if we map this to kind of like pseudo React components, you see that we have a big column wrapping everything. Then we have 2 rows. And inside of each row, we have a bunch of buttons. And instead of having the tab indexes that we would have on the web, we actually have this gamepad indexes instead. And what we would actually have then would actually be actual React components that would be like a landing page layout for the whole thing, a tile list, a menu tile, a shelf, and a bunch of cards, right? Custom components specific to what we need. So it's kind of like a tab index 2.0, right? It's like the difference being that it supports 2 dimensions. We want to allow scrolling into view whenever we get the focus. We want to support grids, and we want it to also kind of be integrated with the existing tab index. So if you tab, it still should work. And it should be completely controlled. Like controlled here, I mean like a controlled component in React language. So I want to basically take an existing component, and I want to make it support gamepad navigation. And the way that we provide support for that is through hooks and TypeScript. And how many here know about hooks, the hooks API? That's good, because I don't have time to explain it. But it's pretty awesome, and we're very happy about this combination. I don't know how many of you have done high-order components before? High-order components with TypeScript. Not many of you have known the pain. So like doing TypeScript and high-order components can be quite a mess, especially if you're learning TypeScript. It's like very confusing how you do it. But hooks, they're just functions. So it's very easy to type annotate them, because you mean just passing parameters and you get values back. And these are the hooks that we have for the Gamepad support. We basically have one to use focus, another one to use a row, and another one to use a column. And the way that we use them, so if we take that card there that I'm highlighting there at the top, and I want to add support for gamepad navigation to it, then this is just a simple like function component named card. And the only extra thing that I'm doing here is that I'm importing the use focus hook from our React Gamepad library. And I'm calling it here at the bottom, passing like a gamepad configuration that, as we saw, has the tab index configuration on it. OnClick, that's the handler when the user actually press like the A button to click on that thing. And a ref that we use to be able to know where the button is to do scroll into view. And what this hook returns is a Boolean saying that if this thing is focused or not. And then I can just use this to style it differently, to like put a border or whatever to highlight that this thing is actually focused. And for the row, we actually have then the other hook there that's called useRow. And a similar approach, I just called the useRow hook, but then it returns instead a component for me. And that component, I need to basically wrap whatever I want to be inside a row. In this case, it's basically all of the children. So what I'm saying here is like, I want to use a row. I get a row component that I wrap everything that I want to be inside that row. Nice. So now that I know kind of like how to set everything up, the second thing is like, how do I know exactly what is focused, right? And this is important because we want a behavior that's like, I want to be like a controlled component in React and be able to say exactly what is focused, and that should be focused no matter what. The browser also has something that's akin to this with the active element. So whenever you have something focused in the browser, you can actually go in the script and do like document.activeElement, and you actually have reference to the actual DOM element that is currently holding the focus. So we want something like this, but instead, like given that we're using React, we're actually going to have a gamepad provider there at the top. And then we need to have a way of like giving IDs to everything. So what the library does under the hood is like the column is going to get ID 1, the row, there's going to get ID 2, then the play button is going to get an ID 3, the setting is going to get an ID 4, and so on. So it's basically given an internal identifier to all of these elements that can be related to the focus. And then I can basically say that I want the focus ID to be the ID number 3. And what this means is that actually the play button here will be focused no matter what. I'm setting it to 3. If the user tries to do whatever, plays around with the gamepad, nothing will change because I'm saying the focused ID is 3 and is 3 as long as until the end of time. Okay. But of course, the IDs are not very handy for us. The IDs are something internal. What we actually want to do is also be able to set some sort of aliases. So in this case, I'm saying that the same play button has an alias named play. That way I can actually say that, for example, when the game starts, I actually want the focus to start on the play button so they can just press A and go from there. And given this is controlled, it allows me to basically, at one point, if I want to focus, like, I don't know, a specific button to change the profile, I can just do that, and that button will be focused. Nice. So the other part that we need to do now is actually react on focus change. And this is basically allowing the user to actually do something with all this infrastructure that we have. And then what we need is another piece to the gamepad provider, which is a callback, right? So we are setting the focused ID. So we need a callback to know when the focus ID change. And given this is a controlled component, then what we do in a very simple way in this Minecraft application is every time the focus changes, I just update a local state with the new value of the focus. And what this basically allows the user to navigate, because it's going to update the state every time it changes. It's the simplest thing that you can do. Nice. So to be able to do a navigation, right, I need to know where I can go. So if I have the focus on a particular button and I press right, how do I know where do I go? And what we need to do then is basically from this React component tree, we actually need to be able to create something that we call a focus tree. So from all of these components that we have that are related somehow to something that is akin to focus, like rows, columns, and the buttons, we actually need to construct a tree that we see on the right there, where we see, for example, that the column, that's ID 1, that's at the root, and then it has 2 children, that's number with the ID 2 and 5, that's both the 2 rows here, and then like the row with the ID 2 has the ID 3 and 4, which are the play and the settings buttons. So we just need a way to take this component tree in React and create like this focus tree. That's basically this structure in a JavaScript object. It's just a tree, and we have a way of representing it in code. And so then when we want to navigate, what we need to do then is basically take a focus tree. That's this representation of everything, the rows, the columns, and the buttons that I can navigate. Then I need to know what's the current focused ID, which in this case I'm saying it's the ID 3. I need to know a direction, which let's say is right. And then we instinctively know that given this is a row and I'm number 3 and I press right, this will go to number 4, right? So that's the logic that we have. And this is the simplest use case you need to build for the navigation to work with just a row to go right. But we actually built this function to handle navigation. And it has like around 47 test cases to handle everything from like going back and forth, jumping between columns and different rows, and all sorts of crazy things that people can do with the gamepad. Nice. So I talked about having this React component tree, and then we have this focus tree. How can I actually make the creation of this focus tree next to the existing React component tree that it builds every time it renders? And for that, we rely on the context API. People are here familiar with the context API? Nice. It's actually pretty neat. It's a neat way to pass information down to components, but instead of passing to props, you actually pass kind of like hidden through context. So kind of a way of jumping, passing props down to a component, passing value down to a component. And we have this thing that's a path context, which is basically an array of strings, and it works like that. So if we look at the shelf example that I showed you before, so remember, this is how we define that shelf. That is just a row that has components that can be navigated with the gamepad. And I remember I talked about this, right? The use row, it returns a component. It returns this row component that I need to then wrap everything that's inside this shelf. And what is happening here with the use row is actually, this is a simplified, shrink down version of what's actually inside of it. But the part that I want you to pay attention is kind of like this middle part here. It's using some hook magic. But this use row, it returns this wrapper that we create here in the middle. And this wrapper uses the use memo so that we don't create it over and over. But it's just a React component that takes the children, and then it calculates a path with ID, which is basically, on my perspective, given I am the current row, what's the path that I'm going to pass down? So if we take the first row there, it's basically going to set, it's receiving a path from the parent that's empty, because that's the default value of the context. So basically, there's no one above me. I am the root. I know my ID, which is ID 1, and then that's basically going to be that's the path that I am. The second one, when we go down the tree, it's actually going to be, the path is going to be containing ID 1, which is my parent. And then I know that my ID is ID 2. And once we go down one more level down to the actual thing that can take focus, which is like a button, this one is using the gamepad path to read the path, and the path contains 1 and 2. So that's how we construct the information about all my parents, so that I can use this and basically create a tree information on the side. And finally, this is the use focus, and you can see that it's just reading the path, and this is basically the path of all of my parent components. And I just add it to the tree. Cool. To conclude, there are many other concerns when we build game UIs, like so sound effects, right? So when you're building a checkout application. You don't need to play sound effects when people buy or they change their payments, the payment option. But here, every time the user changes the focus or click a button, we need to play sounds. We actually have a different way of handling data. So when we're building a normal web application, you have the internet between your client and the server, right? Where with us, we actually have our backend is the C++ engine running the game right next to us. So it's a very different way of exposing data than you would in a normal web application. Also routing, we're building this application with existing UI, build it with the existing UI technology, and we need a way of unifiedly describe where I am in the application, and everything should just work. Plus device availability. This is kind of like, what's the word? Responsive design. But it's kind of like responsive design to the extreme, right? Because I can be on a Surface laptop and I can interact with touch, but then I can connect a gamepad, and then it should show all the gamepad icons, and then I could use my mouse, and then I connect that to a TV. And so it can go pretty crazy, and we need to basically be able to adapt to all the inputs and the screens that we're in. And also scaling is very different. And so on. So if you want to help us do this, we're going to hire, and we're going to start hire pretty soon for developers. And we actually have open position for designers in the designer lead. So if you're interested, please come talk to me. Everything that we're building is being built as kind of a library. So we have the gamepad that I talked about today. We have another package for dealing with sound. Even the way that we handle data with the engine is also its own package. And the goal is to basically open source all of the work that we're doing. So none of it is open source yet. So if you want to know when they are available, you can follow me on Twitter. There's nothing there because I deleted my Twitter account last year. So it's empty. But I'm gonna tweet if something is available, or you can just follow the Mojang GitHub repository. Yay! Thank you. And I think we have time for questions. Yep.
I didn't quite understand. What did you use? You used memoization for building the tree, right?
Yes.
What was the purpose of building that array?
Which array? The path with ID?
Yeah, exactly. How are you, like the path, are you traversing the path somehow, or is that in front of the starting point? If you go to the next slide,
Yeah.
where you had all the IDs listed.
Yeah.
Why did you build this path? What was this for?
So we need the information to actually have an implementation of a tree. That's another thing that I didn't cover here. But basically, once I am on the node here on the number 3, which is the actual button, I need to be able to add it to the 3, and I need to this focus tree that I'm creating, right? The structure that I showed there. And I need to be able to know where I am. I can just say, of course, just the parent. I don't need to say all the path. Like I don't need to say that I'm under 2 and 1. But it made it simpler for us it made it faster to add having the whole path, and that was like cheaper. It was okay. So we did it that way. So we have the whole path of basically all of my parents. So for the button there on number 3, I basically know my immediate parent is number 2, and its parent is number 1. And with that information, I can construct a tree, right? I can do every time I add, and I know a path and my own ID. If I do a bunch of adds of those, in the end, I'm going to have that tree structure that I showed before. And since you made a question, I have a. A good perk of working in Mojang, the people that do merchandising for Minecraft is at our office. And we receive samples every week or so we have a bunch of swag. Yeah.
Use the same system for the in-game UI stuff.
That's a very good question. So all of this is built with the purpose of like out of game as a first goal. The React part specifically. We haven't proven the React for the in-game stuff, especially for the HUD. For like inventory, like stuff that you kind of like can pause the game, go to it. I think it would probably work from tests that we did. But the solution that I talked about from Coherent Labs, they have their own templating language that then runs kind of like in C++. So our approach is basically we're going to use React until it becomes a bottleneck. And once we have a performance issue, we're going to fall back to using the native templating language. So stuff like a HUD that updates 60 frames per second, that's probably going to be done with the native templating language of that game face that I showed you. But it's still going to be rendered through React. It's just not going to be updated through React.
Okay. I have another question.
Oh. Yeah.
I have another question. It's slightly off topic, but did you rewrite the entire game engine from Java to C++ when you were brought up by Microsoft?
So I don't know the answer to that question. But I think it's the same code base, just being continuously evolved. And we do have both versions, right? We have the Java edition and the Bedrock edition, and both are continuously being developed. So both are maintained, both are developed. They're two different Minecrafts, basically. Yeah.
This Gamepad API, does it use the browser Gamepad?
Yes, yes. It uses the native browser API.
Was that good enough? Does that handle everything? Or did that work fine for you?
Yeah, it's working fine, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Couldn't you do this in JavaScript, like a mouse over, say mouse focusable things? If you say mouse over, you will always focus on it.
Yes. And we need to do that as well. We need to do that as well. So we need to support the gamepad, but we need to support the mouse as well, and touch. So we need to do that as well. Yeah, not only that, yeah. That's the last one. Yeah, it's over now. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry, he was first.
Question about memorization. When you're using memorizer, I think it's a purpose of the algorithms. It's keeping in memory what you have already calculated. But you're not passing any states, as you can see in the previous slide, right? You are
So,
just passing all.
sorry, what?
Slide before this. Yes,
This one.
This row, you are passing gamepad.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, this row is very stupid, right? In the reality, you would have maybe, I don't know, you have a title or you have some extra stuff that you're passing here. That would be like some more state, yes. Yeah. Like we would have that as well. Yeah. But this is just to demonstrate the row, the gamepad part. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about this layout engine. Does it exist for any other game engines,
So,
or is it specific to your?
No. Like so, it's available for Unreal, Unity, and also custom engine, right? Which is our case because we have a custom engine for Minecraft.
And like another question, just to follow up. Could you tell about any limitations that you have to overcome? Like what doesn't exist, and what do you suffer from not having something that exists in React in real browser?
Yeah, every now and then we do get some stuff that we need to kind of circumvent. There's you've done everything in Chrome and then you open in the game what is going on? Or yeah, we do have some of these stuff. So for example, for doing the theming of the game, we're actually using CSS custom properties, and it doesn't support CSS custom properties with shorthand operators. So I cannot type border and pass a variable. I actually need to pass border top color, border down color, and it's 15 lines instead of just one. That kind of stuff you do have, but that's fine.
I should wrap that since I'm sorry.
Yeah, you could do post CSS, which we use for some stuff. Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulo, for the awesome talk. I really liked it. And unexpected gifts. You also get one.
Thank you.
From now on, our speakers will get these nice FikaJS speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.